Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I didn't hear y'all. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. See, we're in a fight. I come for you peace. I come to you in peace, but we are in a fight for our lives. I like to look at things from a historical perspective because I believe in the old adage, you can't know where you're going if you don't know from where you come. So let's step back in history for a little bit. At the conception of our country, Africans from what I affectionately call the motherland were captured and sold into a life of slavery. In the early stages of our country, black people always felt that their freedom was soon to be theirs. In fact, the first known casualty of the Boston Massacre, which began the American Revolution, was a black man named Crispus Attucks. Many other blacks fought with honor and pride in hopes that freedom would be obtainable. However, our founding fathers gave an outstanding blow to the security of freedom. In the Constitution, black people were labeled as only 3/5 human. The Constitution sanctioned slavery and described blacks as only property. So, for countless generations thereafter, men, women, and children were whipped, beat, chained, raped, and dehumanized in every way possible. Their labor was the backbone that made America great. Amen. However, establishing and continuing the cruelty of slavery forged the conception of a perpetual underclass of people. Although those who were enslaved and the generations of their descendants were never appropriately or fairly recognized or compensated for their sacrifices. They held on to the hope, though, and dreamed that they would one day be recognized as full American citizens. So fast forward to the years after slavery, which we know as the Reconstruction period, where African Americans had fought valiantly in the war for their freedom, and they found that they would finally secure it. There were black U.S. senators elected, black businesses were started, and spirits soared high. But the eternal hope of equality was again extinguished because of radical groups such as the KKK that terrorized. See, terrorism has always been here in America. Right. Don't let them fool y'all. Don't let them fool y'all. Or don't make it fool. Terrorized, and they deterred African Americans from continuing to participate as full citizens in all aspects of society. The members of the KKK were everyday citizens that black people had to come encounter with. They were the grocer, the sheriff, the farmer, and all the rest of the community people, which added an extra layer to the terror and threat of harm to themselves and their families. So we're going to fast forward, right? So we went from slavery, we went through Jim Crow, we thought, and so on and so forth, and now we're here today. So what's common about all these time periods? There seems to be a common thread of white superiority or white privilege. This thread weaves its way into shaping laws, written or not written, shaping attitudes that promote oppression of people of color. It has remarkably bound together those of wealth and those who have nothing, those who are educated and those who are not, those who claim religion and those who don't, to perpetuate the horror hate of racism. Throughout this time, African Americans and people, all people of goodwill, still made attempts to gain full equality for all Americans. Uninformed Americans are under the assumption, because there are no longer plantations, overseers, whips, chains, sheets, signs labeled white only. Oh, and Lord forbid we elected our first black president. They say racism is over. But my friends, I am here to repeat the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. So tell me, beautiful beautiful African American brothers and sisters. Tell me, beautiful brothers and sisters of every hue of the rainbow. Tell me, my beautiful Caucasian brothers and sisters, my LBGT community. Tell me, can you see racism?
Yeah!
Can you hear racism?
Yeah!
Can you feel racism?
Yeah!
But we are told that that feeling is only for the weak. We are told that what we see and what we hear and what we feel, and for some of us, what we experience daily is our own false reality.
No.
We have been accused of involving and spewing in alternative facts. As time has gone forward, the ideology of white supremacy has embedded itself into every aspect of our lives. It has threaded and weaved itself into the fabric of American society so that what binds those that prescribe to it brings them together like a wet blanket, suffocating the life and the aspiration out of full equality for all. And in the blanket, there's a virus that replicates hate. This virus is creating a deep infection that mutates, changes, and continues to fester so that the stench stinks. But I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, it is time for us to extract that infection, evacuate that infection, clean up that infection, vaccinate against that infection, and heal from this virus. So what do we call all of this today? Because the terms change. What we call it today is called systemic racism. Don't let the words fool you. The name changed, but the game is still the same. As defined by Joe Fegan in his book, Racist America, Roots, Current Realities, and Future Reparations, systematic racism, stay with me y'all, systematic racism includes the complex array of anti-black practices, the unjustly gained political economic power of whites, the continuing economic and other resource inequalities along racial lines, and the white racist ideologies and attitudes created to maintain and rationalize white privilege and power. Systemic here means that the core racist realities are manifested where? In each of our society's major parts. Each major part of U.S. society, the economy, politics, education, religion, and the family reflects the fundamental reality of systemic racism. Y'all still with me? But I know you've heard the rhetoric. My ancestors had slaves, but I don't. You people need to get over it. Slavery is over. Really? Are you serious? So let me break this down for y'all and those misinformed souls. Let's look at education. If you look at the leadership in our country's colleges and universities, it is overwhelmingly white. Therefore, the ideology and philosophy of white superiority is taught, instilled, repeated, and protected in the institutions of higher learning. Our new, fresh young minds are being indoctrinated and shaped to continue the sins of the father and the mother in their own generational culture and language. So you see young people participating in what we call so-called pranks. Remember the college boys that was all in blackface? You remember the college where they was hanging the monkeys from the lockers? Okay. Let's look at primary education. It is a known fact that black children, especially black boys, are labeled problematic and learning disabled. In fact, the predictor of whether a black boy will go to prison is based on a statistical measurement of his inability to read by the 3rd or 4th grade. Well, let's shine the spotlight on public schools. Is it a coincidence that children in predominantly black communities have schools that are dilapidated, old, worn out, worn down, some without heat, others without air conditioning, and most without resources or state-of-the-art facilities that allow for educational success in today's world? I think not. Is racism dead? According to the NAACP report in 2016, African Americans are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of whites. The imprisonment rate for African American women is twice that of white women. Nationwide, African American children represent 32% of children who are arrested. Though African Americans and Hispanics make up approximately 32% of the U.S. population, they comprise 56% of all incarcerated people in 2015. So do you tell me that slavery and racism still exists? So it is very transparent that given there is a pervasive attitude that if a person of color, if you are seen to do anything, you are guilty no matter the situation. You are not afforded due justice. The same attitude allows for the killing of unarmed black people in alarming numbers. It is no secret that draconian laws, which have been passed in 34 of 50 states that suppress the right to vote, are for people of color, the elderly, the students, and the disabled, taking away the right to self-determination and place in office people who promote policies that will serve the well-being of all Americans. The right to vote is the common thread that entwines in all areas mentioned. Present lawmakers commit violence upon us every day, passing laws that deny equal justice under the law, passing laws that prevent people from having affordable and accessible health care, passing laws that continue to increase poverty. But what is the cost? The cost is a Yale student being accosted because she fell asleep in her university's commons.
That ain't right.
The cost is a young black couple who couldn't barbecue in a park on a weekend because someone felt they were out of place there. It's the fear that grips and encompasses my heart every time my father, my uncle, my cousin, my friends, and even myself drive and could unjustly be stopped for a lie. Fear that they will be harassed and maybe even killed for speaking their truth. Fear that if I express myself too passionately, that I too can be silenced by death. But I'm not afraid, y'all. Fagan points out that with historical documentation that costs and burdens of racism are disproportionately borne by people of color and black people especially. Having to bear the unjust cost and burden is a core aspect of systemic racism. This includes shorter lifespans, limited income and wealth potential, impacted family structure as a result of mass incarceration of blacks and Latinos, and limited educational resources. That's very heartbreaking. But I'm here to tell you today, family, 50 years ago, Dr. King had a vision. He had a vision that said all people are affected by this ideology. The damaging fact is that most people affected by this ideology are in poverty or end up in poverty. So he started the Poor People's Campaign that included all that wanted to tear down the walls of racism. So today, we pick up where those brave souls and soldiers started. We start with a smile on our face and a determination in our heart that this wall of hatred will come down. We are determined that we want to eradicate poverty for those disproportionately affected. Dr. King says, freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Are y'all ready to demand freedom? The ultimate, Dr. King also says, the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty of bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. Are you going to keep remaining silent, friends? No! Dr. King also said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Friends, are we ready to start on that path to freedom? Friends, we are gathered today to carry on the new narrative that will forever shape our country. We hear you, ancestors. We honor you, ancestors. We will continue to fight in the struggle for equality for all people, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of religion, regardless of ability, regardless of sexual orientation. We're weaving with the thread of love to pull us together and unite us like a warm blanket, smothering the embers of hate and racism. So I want to end by saying this. 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, and now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Let us protest in love. Let us rally in love.
Yes.
Let us stand in love.
Yes.
Let us walk in love, walking on to freedom land. Thank you.